morning, everybody, and welcome to our online service on this January the 16th. It's so wonderful to be with you today, and I hope you're doing well and you're safe and you're sane with everything that's happening. You know, these days, it's so easy for life just to feel like this tumble and rumble and have little control, and all we sort of want to do is just go to sleep. But whatever the case is, I hope that we can use this time together today to slow down again, to find our place, to find a center in our hearts and bodies, and no matter what is happening in our lives and what is happening in the world, that we can find a way to flow with it and to show up as our highest authentic selves and to see the Spirit in each other and all of life. So as we gather today, we always like to affirm. We like to affirm and to each other and to say that whoever we are and however we identify ourselves, this is a place for us to show up. This is a place where we hope we are continuing to create safety and sanctuary, and a place where we can be who we are no matter what the world says. So as we gather today, we enter with that spirit, that there is a spirit in you, there's a spirit in me, there's a spirit in our whole world that's inviting us to wake up with gratitude and with joy.
The spirit in me greets the spirit in you. Hallelujah. God's in us and we're in God. Hallelujah. The spirit in me greets the spirit in you. Hallelujah. God's in us and we're in God. Hallelujah. Everybody sing. The spirit in me greets the spirit in you. Hallelujah. God's in us and we're in God. Hallelujah. The spirit in me greets the spirit in you. Hallelujah. God's in us and we're in God. Hallelujah. One more time. The spirit in me greets the spirit in you. Hallelujah. God's in us and we're in God.
And so the spirit in me greets the spirit in you. And I hope you also know the spirit in all of nature and all around us greets you and me today as we gather. But you know, sometimes if I'm really truthful, I don't see the spirit in myself. I don't see the spirit in others. I don't see the spirit in the world. I think a lot of us are getting tired, and I have to include myself in this with our whole journey, with everything that's happening. I sometimes feel like it's so easy just to close down, to try and push our way through it, to try and find some control and to hold tighter. And in some ways, as we enter this service, we're looking at how do we find perspective? How do we wake up to be more aware and to more present and to have more space? Because what I find is when I start to shut down, when I start to clench harder, when my heart, sort of puts a curtain over it so it doesn't have to experience any more life, well, I begin to sleepwalk. But when I sleepwalk through life, and sometimes as you get older, time just keeps going faster and faster, and so the sleepwalking just sort of is a blur, is unfortunately we miss the beauty and the gratitude and the joy of life. And Phileena Heuertz, who is part of an organization that helps people understand this and understand the contemplative journey and how to be awake to life, says this about her own journey with following asleep and waking up.
Sleepwalking is what we do when we want to avoid particular things about reality. So maybe we want to avoid various questions or doubts that we have about ourselves or about others or about ultimate reality. Perhaps we're avoiding particular pain that we don't want to deal with, and so we sort of find a way to numb out and cruise through life in a way that is not quite aware and alert and awake. And I think of that as sleepwalking, just kind of coasting through life, not fully aware, awake, alert, paying attention to what's real.
And caffeine can't take care of that?
I think caffeine just has the effect of helping me move through life a little faster, but it doesn't necessarily make me more aware and mindful of what's happening in my life and in my reality. I'll never forget when I woke up. I realized that I've been sleepwalking for nearly all my life. I had been working for many years in social justice, working with children living on the streets, children with HIV and AIDS, former child soldiers and war brides, and survivors of trafficking. And that was really intense work. And I woke up after kind of coming to the end of myself in that line of work, realizing that I had limitations and I was struggling to really continue in the way that I had been serving in the world. And so as I started to wake up, I started to realize that there was a whole lot of mental chatter going on in my life. I mean, I'd just be hanging out with friends, and it was as if everything I was doing and saying was being filtered through this inner dialogue with myself. And I thought, gosh, what must be wrong with me? Like, does anybody else have this experience? And I started to realize that like all that mental chatter was really draining a lot of life out of me, and it was really causing me to not be as present to the people that I was with. So I started to realize that was going on, and then I realized, wow, this must have been going on for a very long time, and I didn't even realize it. And so that's what I mean by sleepwalking, in a way that there's this whole other reality internally that's going on that we spend most of our life not even aware of. And so when I woke up to all that mental chatter, I realized that I wanted to be more free of that. And for me, a lot of that mental chatter was around what other people thought about me, and whether or not I was going to have their approval and win their affection. And so I was measuring everything that I was saying and doing and the way that I was coming across so that it would meet a particular expectation of the other, or what I imagined that they would expect or want from me. And so this kind of awareness initially helped me realize that I wanted to live a different way. I didn't want to have to deal with all that mental chatter going on, and I wanted to be more free and more present and more aware. And it was around that time that I met a Cistercian monk named Thomas Keating, who introduced me to the contemplative tradition and a contemplative practice called centering prayer. And centering prayer is a simple but not easy meditation practice where I sit for 20 minutes and find a way to be in the silence in such a way that all that mental chatter and the attachments and the compulsions and the unconscious motivations that are attached to it begin to surface. And as all of that begins to surface through the practice of meditation, a meditation practice like centering prayer, then all of that internal noise begins to surface and then begins to be released in such a way that then, as I go through life, I have much less inner chatter, much less inner noise to be fighting for my attention. And when that noise can be cleared out and that dialogue can be quieted, it's like there's more space within me for my essence and for really the Spirit of God to be more alive and moving in and through me. And it, it's much more than just having a more peace-filled life. Pain and suffering is still a part of life, but not having to contend with keeping up a particular persona makes dealing with life a lot easier, a lot smoother, a lot freer.
I don't know if this is new for you, if you ever thought about it before, or if you even have experienced it before. But for me, it's quite profound, and it's part of the reason that we have community. Not the total reason, but it's one of the reasons, is that we have this space where we can grow together, and we can be transformed together so that we can awaken together to a reality that's always with us. A reality that we sometimes sleepwalk through. It doesn't actually change reality, but it brings it more alive to us. I don't know about you, but I have a wonderful mental chatter and wonderful imagination around it. And I have wonderful imagined expectations I feel of others that I put upon myself to do. And so what happens is when we're involved in this inside sort of unreal mental chatter, it's like when we're driving along on the road and you start the journey, and then 20 minutes or 30 minutes later you arrive at your journey in your car, and has it ever happened to you? You don't know how you got to your final destination. Somehow you weren't in an accident, you didn't drive off the road, but somehow you got there. And in a way, that's how when we're not awake and aware, this sleepwalking feels. Somehow we got involved in something else, but we still got there. And so part of the practice, that to find perspective and find spiritual perspective, is that we have to, as Phileena Heuertz says, some of the practices she uses is this. It is to stop. We have to stop. We just can't keep doing things at 100 miles an hour and at the speed of the internet and Facebook and YouTube and all these things. We have to stop. We have to breathe. We breathe consciously. Come back into our body and then be still for a second so that the racing thoughts of our mind we can catch up with and be still. And then we surrender to the flow of life and listen again. So I'd like to, at the beginning of this service, to do a practice with you so that we could stop, that we can breathe, and that we can be still. And maybe eventually in the service we'll get to a point of surrender. Surrender is not giving up. It's actually just letting go of the will of the ego to be in control. And then to listen to what the divine, the sacred flow is saying to you and me. So what we'll do first is this. We're going to have a moment of what I like to call breathing and being still practice. So I'll lead you through a type of prayer where we do some breathing, and then we follow the mantra, be still and know that I'm God. But in this one, we've translated God to be the breathing life that is in you and everything. And what we'll do as we go through these phrases is, you can join along at home, is that we'll say the whole phrase, and there'll be stillness after it, and we'll drop it each moment. We'll drop another one. And sometimes one of the practices you can use in your daily life is by following a mantra or a phrase or a quote or a scripture verse. It's a way to stop, to come back into breathing and to slow down, and then to be able to enter into that listening and surrendering. Then there'll be a moment of silence, and then we'll wrap up the prayer time with some words, which will flow then into a Taizé song, which will be sung in Latin, and you could sing along in Latin, or you can add the English words. They're very simple. Come and fill my hearts with your peace. You alone are holy. And this will be our time to stop, to breathe, to be still. So you might just want to put your feet on the floor. You could follow along and look at the screen if you want, or you could just close your eyes and let the words and follow along with the words in your hearts with you. So let's begin this time of stopping and breathing and being still. Stop and breathe. So no matter what's happening now in your life as we enter this time of prayer, I invite you just to feel your body and to feel your breath, and just to take a deep breath in and feel it entering your body and filling your lungs and your lower stomach, and then slowly breathe out and feel the tension that you're in leaving you. And then in a second here, we'll join together in the words, be still. So join me. Be still and know that I am breathing life in you and in everything. And after each one, you might want to take another breath before we begin the next part. Be still and know that I am breathing life in you. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Take another breath in. If you find yourself starting to get caught in thoughts or emotions or imaginations, just gently let it go without judgment and come back to your breath. Feel your body. Feel this present moment. Feel how there is presence and space and potential. Maybe even there's some inwelling of gratitude of this moment, of your life, of life itself. And so breathing life as we enter this moment. May we stop. May we remember to breathe consciously that you're within us and around us and in everything in our midst. And may we find a stillness to allow ourselves to be awake to this moment, the only moment we have.
Domino, quo ne arbone
at least for me, slowing down and following my breath. You know, a breath prayer is a very ancient prayer in our tradition and many traditions. Following our breath, breathing in consciously and breathing out consciously, it brings us into the moment. It helps us to stop and to be still and to let go. And then it opens us to listen to the flow. Scientifically, they also find that the breath causes our whole system to release stress and anxiety and fear and all those things that clench us and compel us to hold on and to not let go. So I hope you have a little more peace now. And in our tradition, as you might have heard last week, is one of the ways that we can listen is through what I like to call a practice of divine reading. It's also called Lectio Divina. And, you know, there's some assumptions here, and I'd like to share a couple of those assumptions with you. First of all, there is an assumption that you have an inherent spiritual dignity already within you. And this inherent spiritual dignity means that through your heart and your mind nested in your heart, or your intellect and your reasoning, but your heart and your intuition and your imagination and the soul of who you are is able to hear wisdom, is able to listen to the sacred in your life and the sacred around you, and the sacred that binds and connects all of us into one life, into one unity. There is one source of all our life, and that you have this innate spiritual dignity and ability to listen. And in listening, in many different ways, not just with words, it could be your imagination, it could be emotions, it could be your intuition. It could be your gut feeling. Sometimes that's really important, your gut feeling, is that you can be touched, that you can be transformed, that you can grow with this flow. And so in some ways, you don't need me. You don't need a minister to talk and to tell you what to believe. Really, the surest, and this is the second assumption, the surest and most important way for you to touch into the one life that you have, connected to everything else, is to begin to practice your own personal listening. Now, we check that in community so we don't go off doing some strange things that maybe is more informed by our ego. But this is the two assumptions that we do. And so in divine reading, often there are 3 or 4 different questions or practices, and I'll lead you through them today as we do them. And you use different texts. So we're going to use Psalm 146. So sometimes we use the holy text. You can use readings from mystics. You could use nonfiction readings. You can even sit with a tree and the divine wisdom that's in the tree and of the tree and the tree can speak to you. So, but we'll use Holy Scriptures today. So the first question, and you might want to just relax, sit down, take a deep breath again, is the first question is this. We'll have 3 questions. Here's the first question. What words or phrases or images grab your attention of your heart? So not so much your mind. You want to bring your awareness down in your heart. Sort of like how you move your voice, when you have your high head voice, like you're sort of scared in your head and you're thinking. And when you sing, you move your voice deeper into your heart and body. You can tell when I'm nervous because I'm not down here. So you want to move how you feel down into your heart and let your heart hear. And so as we read Psalm 140, we'll read it. What images, words, or phrases grab the attention of your heart, and just focus on that. And after we finish reading it, and you can read it out loud too if you want with me, there will be about a 30-second moment of silence just to let it sit in your heart. Let it sit there. Let whatever came up be with you. So let's do our first reading as we ponder this first question. Psalm 146. Praise to you, O divine, O my soul, give gratitude. I will praise you with all my being. I will sing joyfully with thanksgiving to you, heart of my heart. Put not your trust in riches, in illusionary things that fade away. For when our day comes to depart this world, at that very time, we carry only the love imprinted upon our soul. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, O sacred life, whose trust is in you, O divine presence. Who gave birth to the universe, the heavens, earth, and sea, and all that is within them. You are ever faithful, bringing balance and harmony to earth, nourishment to body and soul. You invite us to freedom from bonds of fear. You give insight to those who would see. You lift up the faint-hearted, give succor to those who weep. You watch over those on journey, sending guides and angels to lead the way. Oh, that we might become beacons of light to those in chaos, confusion, and crisis. May you, who live forever in our hearts, loose the fetters of fear that bind us, that we might be grateful for your flowing presence with free and joyful song. May it be so. Was there a word, a phrase, an image that grabbed your heart? It's sort of hard when I'm reading it to participate in the same way with you, but for me it was the phrase, to those who see, you give insight. It's like when we stop, for me, at least when I stop, and I slow down and I'm still and I let go, it's like I see in some ways, and there's these insights that come out of nowhere, what I'm not expecting. So in the second reading, again, we'd want to be present in our hearts and listen with our hearts. We ask the question, how is your heart speaking to you as you listen to this reading of Psalm 146? Are there certain emotions that come up? Do you feel certain energies? You know, maybe something's stuck somewhere and you feel that stuckness in your body. Is there a memory that comes up? Whether it is, whether you judge it good or bad, pleasant or painful, suffering or joyful, or are there certain desires, and I mean desires in the best way. You know, is there a desire that you feel in your heart as you listen to that reading? So pay attention to that. And after we read it again, in the moment of silence, as we are with nature and another view of the tree, just be with that. Let whatever you experienced be, as we hear our second reading of Psalm 146.
Psalm 146. Praise be to you, O divine. O my soul, give gratitude. I will praise you with all my being. I will sing joyfully and with thanksgiving to you, heart of my heart. Put not your trust in riches, in illusionary things that fade away. For when our day comes to depart this world, at that very time, we carry only the love imprinted upon our soul. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, O sacred life, whose trust is in you, O divine presence, who gave birth to the universe, the heavens, earth, and sea, and all that is within them. You are ever faithful, bringing balance and harmony to earth, nourishment to body and soul. You invite us to freedom from bonds of fear. You give insight to those who would see. You lift up the faint-hearted, giving succor to those who weep. You watch over those on journey, sending guides and angels to lead the way. Oh, that we might become beacons of light to those in chaos, confusion, and crisis. May you, who live forever in our hearts, loose the fetters of fears that bind us, that we might be grateful for your flowing presence with free and joyous song. May it be so.
Wow. As I listened with my heart to this second reading, I got tears in my eyes for some reason, and then I felt this sort of warmth in this area, and I don't know if you call it peace or sort of rest or hope. How about you? What did you experience? What came through for you in the second reading of our divine reading and listening for the sacred flow and this space and presence that's in our life? In our third reading, we have a third question. You see how it keeps sort of taking us deeper? We sort of start and then we go down, and then we sort of come back up a little bit because it always brings us back to life. And so as you listen to this Psalm 146 for the third time, and you listen, I invite you to even more deeply in your heart, maybe even feel it from your belly. Is there a response that arises spontaneously? I don't know, maybe it's a prayer for something or someone. Maybe you feel called to be a certain way after we're done this service. Maybe you have an intention. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. You see, it's a mystery, and only you could discover it by taking the moment to stop and to breathe with the reading, to surrender or let go into it, and then listen for the unexpected, the unexplained, sometimes surprising, sometimes challenging, sometimes peaceful. But it's there for you in the third reading. And sometimes when we do readings, maybe nothing will happen too. And that's okay too. It may, the spontaneous arising may actually come, later tonight as you're going to bed, when you wake up tomorrow, when you're going to the bathroom or showering, or maybe later in the week, suddenly something will happen because you did this deep listening practice today. So let's read it for our third time as we listen deeply with our heart and body. Psalm 146. Praise be to you, O divine. O my soul, give gratitude. I will praise you with all my being. I will sing joyfully and with thanksgiving to you, heart of my heart. Put not your trust in riches, in illusionary things that fade away. For when our day comes to depart this world, at that very time we carry only the love imprinted upon our soul. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, O sacred life, whose trust is in you, O divine presence, who gave birth to the universe, the heavens, earth, and sea, and all that is within them. You are ever faithful, bringing balance and harmony to earth, nourishment to body and soul. You invite us to freedom from bonds of fear. You give insight to those who would see. You lift up the faint-hearted, give succor to those who weep. You watch over those on journey, sending guides and angels to lead the way. Oh, that we might become beacons of light to those in chaos, confusion, and crisis. May you who live forever in our hearts loose the fetters of fear that bind us, that we might be grateful for your flowing presence with free and joyful song. May it be so. Amen.
Be still and know how I can give and how to forgive in this quiet place, in this quiet place. Help me be still and know you. Like Jesus in the garden, let me be in this quiet place. Let me see a path for me. Let me trust in your grace. In this quiet place, in this quiet place, help me be still and know how to be true in all I do. In this quiet place, in this quiet place, help me be still and know you.
You know, the beautiful thing is that by listening deeply to the most authentic thing within you, is that you know the divine, you know the sacred in God, or vice versa, by listening to the divine or the flow of life, or that stillness in others or yourself or nature, you know yourself then too. But sometimes, you know, we have to look at life differently. sometimes when we're sleepwalking, when we're busy, when we're caught in fear and anxiety, which I've been experiencing my own share of anxiety in this time, is that we have to find a different perspective. And so I'd like to read a story today, which I really feel is about a story about finding spiritual perspective. And it is The Catawampus Cat. The Catawampus Cat by Jason Carter Eaton, and his pictures by Gus Garden, and it's published by Crown Books for young readers. So let's read it. The Catawampus Cat arrived early on a Tuesday morning, slightly askew. At first, no one in the town noticed because they were a busy town and the people were a busy people. Tick, tick, tick went the town. Talk, talk, talk went the people. This is how it was every day, every Tuesday. Busy, busy, busy. The first to see him was Mr. Grouse, the grocer, who tried to straighten him. To no avail. "What's with that cat?" asked his wife Lydia, who hadn't said a kind word to Mr. Grocer in almost 20 years. "You're asking me," he said. "He must have been hurt or curious or noticing something." So they both tilted their heads and noticed something. "There's where my wedding ring has been," cried Lydia. "I haven't seen it in 20 years. "You know," said Mr. Grouse sweetly, "from this angle, you look exactly like you did that day we first met." And then they kissed and on walked the Catawampus Cat, still askew, where he was spotted by the bored town barber, Bob Long, who was giving a woman a long bob. As he stared at the Catawampus Cat, he tilted his head and snip, clipped at an angle. "Ah, I love it!" shouted the woman. And on walked the Catawampus Cat, askew as ever, and past a home painter who was busy painting the mayor's house. "What a dull, uncreative job," sighed the painter as he watched the cat walk by. It wasn't until he looked up at his work and that he realized he had been tilting his head. "Brilliant!" exclaimed Mayor Miner. "A work of art!" When Captain Whizbang, the town daredevil, saw the Catawampus Cat, he missed his jump over Dead Man's Gourds. Catawampus! But landed instead in a geyser and set a new record for height. When the town librarian, Miss Reed, saw the Catawampus Cat, she pulled the wrong book off the shelf and then quit her job and set out for adventure. Even Bushy Brows Billiam, who sat in the back of the classroom and never noticed anything, like what time it was or when class was over, noticed the Catawampus Cat and discovered that he could see better than anyone if he just looked at the right angle, and Bushy Brows Billiam set off a chain reaction. Some people began to talk, and then to tilt first their heads, and then themselves, just like the cat. They rebuilt all the houses so that they were leaning and made all the cars off kilter. They spotted prized possessions they thought they'd never see again. Rediscovered old friends they thought they never knew again. Everyone was happy and slanty and catawampus. Tickety, tick, tickety went the town. Tick-tockety-tock went the people. Mayor Meyer decided to name the first Tuesday of the new year Catawampus Cat Day. In honor of the remarkable cat, they all gathered in the lopsided town square and threw confetti at an angle from their uneven stage. Oompa, 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 blared the off-key band as the Catawampus cat walked onto the stage and stared out at the town, now completely Catawampus. "Well, what do you think of it?" asked Mayor Meyer excitedly. "We're all different now, just like you." Everyone held their breath as they awaited the cat's reaction. Slowly, thoughtfully, the Catawampus cat blinked twice and stretched and straightened himself out and walked back out of town, once again uniquely Catawampus. The Catawampus Cat by Jason Carter Eaton. The Catawampus method of seeing the world different. Isn't it so true that sometimes when we find ourselves sleepwalking, or we find ourselves just so busy or caught in anxiety or fear, what we need to do is to do something different. We need to slightly see things from a different angle. Or it's so true that even just changing your body. See, the Catawampus cat is teaching the townspeople and us is that it's not just what you think. See, that's the thing. We think we can think our way through whatever's happening in our life. But actually, thinking can just get us more caught up in more thinking, and we're not actually embodied in a body and in the world. And so there's a great wisdom with the Catawampus cat, is that by actually being in our body and actually changing how we're in our body, slightly askew, they start to experience life different. They start to see things they've lost. They start to see people in different ways. They see the world in a different way, and they wake up. So that's the great part of all our tradition. And that's what Psalm 146 is all about, is that by coming into life differently and having a different perspective that's not just of the mind, but it's actually we see it, we touch it, we feel it, we taste it, it changes our whole being, is that we see life differently and we're more awake, we're more present, and we have more space. I don't know, what do you think about that? That's what I hear from the Catawampus cat. And that's what we were trying to do with our breathing, being still, with divine reading and silence and all other sorts of things, even singing. Sometimes for some folks, singing is that way that it changes the interior perspective, that we're more open to ourselves and the world, and then the flow of life. In this Headspace video, we hear that there is a certain reality that's always with us. They call it the blue sky. You can think of the blue sky as the presence of the divine, the flow of the divine through life, the spirit, the presence of the Christ light. It's always there, but sometimes when we get caught up in our mind, which is not bad, but we can get caught up in all sorts of thoughts, as we heard from Phileena Heuertz, and we can caught up in expectations, and they become clouds. But when we go askew, change our perspective, the blue sky is still there waiting for us.
Take a moment to imagine a bright blue sky stretching off into the distance. Feels pretty good, right? This is a perfect metaphor for the mind, a blank canvas on which thoughts, feelings, and experiences appear. Okay, so maybe there are just a few clouds, but they tend not to bother us or distract us too much, especially if they're the cute little fluffy variety. This is how the mind appears when it's calm, bright, serene, and happy. But life isn't always easy. Sometimes there are a lot more clouds in the sky. Sometimes it might be the dark and stormy variety. Occasionally, we might even begin to wonder if a hurricane's on the way. It gets to the point that it's hard to think of anything else. In fact, sometimes we get so obsessed by the clouds that we forget about the blue sky altogether. But it's still there. Every time you're in a plane and you fly through the clouds, there it is, right? Without fail, blue sky. It's easy to forget that what we're looking for is already here. And that's why we need reminding.
Teach me, God, to wonder. Teach me, God, to see. Let your word of beauty capture me. Praise to you be given, love for you be lived, life be celebrated, joy you give. Let me, God, be open, let me loving be, let your word of people speak to me. Praise to you be given, love for you be lived, life be celebrated, joy you give. Let me, God, be ready, let me be awake, in your word of loving my place take. Praise to you be given, love for you be lived, life be celebrated, joy you give. Teach me, God, to know you, hear you when you speak, see you in my neighbor when we meet. Praise to you be given, love for you be lived, life be celebrated, joy you give.
I'd like to really encourage you, if you're not doing it already, and I assume that most of us are in some ways, is to find some practice that helps you to become eschewed, that helps you move out of sleepwalking, and I do it all the time myself. I'm awake, I go back to sleepwalking. I'm awake, I go back to sleepwalking. It's very natural. We're human. There's no moment where it just happens like a flash of lightning. But find something that sort of helps that reset. Maybe it's divine reading, as we've done. Maybe it's 5 minutes of chanting some phrase that does it for you in the morning or afternoon or evening. Maybe it is a meditation of sitting still for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Maybe it's walking a labyrinth. Maybe it's sacred walking. Maybe it's journaling. There's so many of them. But find one, because when we do that, what it does is it helps us to awake to what's already in front of us, has always been there. It's inside me. It's inside you. It makes life so much more open, free, and present. And the great thing that Phileena Heuertz, as we're going to hear in this video in 1 second, says is that, what we have to do is we have to develop this practice of listening. And what we do with prayer often in the Christian church is it's this one-way dialogue. It's from us, and often it's from our sleepwalking anxiety and control and ego, telling the divine, God, the sacred, what to do. And we all know how that turns out right, or how that works. It doesn't. Instead, what we're invited into is to see that prayer of any form is this allowing ourselves to open up to the flow and presence that is already within us. It's this grace that we have to do nothing for. And so it's turning, again, this askew of even how we think of prayer in our spiritual practices, as we hear from Phileena now.
When I first woke up to this inner noise and inner chatter that was really coming from a place of unconsciousness, an unconscious connection to this personality, this persona, this mask that I was wearing, I wondered, am I the only one? Like, what is wrong with me? And then, and then I started to realize I'm not alone in this. Actually, most of life is a bunch of us walking around sleepwalking, like not fully present, not fully aware, but we all have our own inner dialogue that's connected to our various compulsions and attachments, whether that's to be well liked, or if it's to be in control, or if it's to have a certain kind of sense of security. We're all playing into these programs for happiness, really. And so realizing that this wasn't just my condition, but this was the condition of humanity, really helped me realize that that this isn't just for me, that many of us could benefit from contemplative spirituality and contemplative practice, because even though I'd grown up in the church and took my faith very seriously, most of the ways in which we, collective we, growing up in Western Christianity, most of the ways in which we were formed and the way that we prayed was around still being very much in control of the dialogue. So it was much more about what I communicated to God than it was about being really open and receptive to what God might want to communicate in and through me, which gets to the point that contemplative prayer is set apart from other forms of prayer in that its very nature is designed to wake us up to these unconscious motivations that are compelling us to, again, whether it's to please others and to find approval, or if it's to be in control or to have a sense of power, or if it's around a sense of surviving and having security. Playing into those kinds of programs for happiness really takes us away from the present moment and being available to the present. And experiencing God and being connected and in the flow of ultimate reality can only happen in the present moment. And so if we're too consumed with kind of placating our personality, then we miss out on the opportunity to flow with the energy of life that is creative and at work right here, right now. How can I cooperate with it? How can I be a part of that greater source of life and energy and love? Love is that which really creates and connects us to one another. And if we're too self-absorbed in our own crisis of human condition, then we're not able to really be a conduit of that love that is always moving and flowing and connecting and working in and through and with one another, you know?
That's just a wonderful invitation of what the invitation of prayer is. It's this invitation that we are in the flow of love, in the present moment, so we can experience this wonderful gift of life. So I'd like to invite us into a moment of prayer where we sort of set these intentions, where we do acknowledge the hurts and sufferings and pain in the world, and then we have 2 minutes of silence, where you can just, if you want to practice breathing and being present to who you are in this moment, or maybe you have some of your own prayers or intentions, or just practicing the peace of silence. So let us have, and then we'll finish with the Lord's Prayer. So let us have a moment of prayer now. O Spirit of life, we thank you for this day, our life, the gift of life, the gift and the miracle of each one of us and our world and all of nature. We pray that we have the courage and the insight and the intention to be awake to the flow of each moment, even in the midst of pain and suffering, even in the midst of overwhelming joy and grace and peace. We pray for the insight and for the ability to be present to ourselves, to each other, to nature, and you in this one glorious moment. And so we hold all the suffering of our world, our own lives, all the suffering that's happening that we see on TV and on the internet and on the news. And we pray for its healing, and that we might be part of the healing by being awake to the world with compassion and seeking justice and being present to how you are calling us to be lights of transformation in the confusion and chaos and crisis. And so in this moment of silence, we hold our own prayers. We follow our breath. We set our intentions. We be with each other and this moment. So we join all these prayers, the prayers of our hearts, the prayers for healing, the prayers for waking up, the prayers of gratitude with the one prayer that Jesus taught his disciples. Our breathing life, who art in everything, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, thank you for being on this journey with us here at McKillop United Church and me today. I hope that you find some spiritual perspective today. And know that whoever you are and wherever you are, that we're here for you. Even though we're in the midst of this fifth wave. We've had a flood at the church, that we're not doing what we normally do. We are still open. And if you need anything, please do call us at 403-328-2703. You can go to our website or our Facebook page for lots of information going on. If you'd like to give to us and support this ministry and make a difference in our Lethbridge community and beyond, you can always go to our website too, or call the office to if you haven't given before, to give for the first time. I'd like to share this blessing from the book Dune by Frank Herbert. I've been reading it again after watching the newest movie edition of it, and it says this in the book: "The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. A process cannot be understood by stopping it. Understanding must move with the flow of the process, must join in and flow with it." I hope as you go into your life this week that you might allow yourself to join in and with the flow of life and the sacredness of life and the sacred presence that's in your life, in your family, in your joys and challenges, in your pain and suffering and delights, and to know that life and peace and grace are waiting for you. And so as we go, may God's peace and God's blessings be with you until we meet again. Amen.
Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to move in the power of your spirit. Teach me to walk in the light of your presence. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to love with your heart of compassion. Trust in the word of your promise. Teach me to hope in the day of your coming. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. You wrote the rhythm of life, created heaven and earth. In you is joy without measure. So like a child at your side, I dance to see your delight. So I will dance for your pleasure, pleasure. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to move in the power of your spirit. Teach me to walk in the light of your presence. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to love with your heart of compassion. Trust in the word of your promise. Teach me to hope in the day of your coming. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Let all my movements express a heart that loves to say yes, a will that leads to obey you. Let all my energy blaze to see the joy in your face. Let my whole being praise you, praise you. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to move in the power of your spirit. Teach me to walk in the light of your presence. Teach me to dance to the beat of your heart. Teach me to love with your heart of compassion.